This is a call for vengeance. Welcome to today's show. This is exactly how they're going to convince all of the sheeple out there to ban people from growing their own food. Because, of course, in this new reality they're creating, I've talked for years and years and years about the carbon footprint and about how all of our rights are going to be removed in the name of climate. You can look at the Georgia Guidestones that were once there and conveniently blown up by some crazy conspiracy nut, even though, again, it was for them to go and get the time capsule out. All of this stuff has been documented in the name of nature, right? We've all been indoctrinated throughout our lives with nature and recite. This is all just a huge psyop to lure people together, to herd people into community, to make people feel like there's one common enemy here. And of course, well, it's the environment, protecting the environment because it's protecting our future. But really what it is enslavement. I want to thank Shauna over on the website for posting this on the website because this is exactly how they're going to get people and prevent people from growing their own food. Remember, he who controls the food controls the people. Well, that's what's ultimately going to occur here, right? And this title of this article, somehow people out there are so dumb they will actually believe this. Carbon footprint of homegrown food is 5 times greater than those grown conventionally. So while they tell us that all this stuff with the carbon in the atmosphere, is all these big buildings with these big pipes sticking out and all the smoke going out of there, people get convinced that the smoke out there is polluting the atmosphere, polluting us, and it's affecting the future of society, creating what is called global warming. They don't believe in geoengineering or weather manipulation, even though it's documented by our government and patented by our own government. So this is a way they're going to convince people that your next door neighbor who might be growing food in their garden is dangerous. You even having the mindset of growing your own food, dangerous. Well, of course, because they've done everything they possibly can already to prevent people from being able to farm on their own. I've talked about those community gardens. You remember that in the past, some of you out there? If you don't know, community gardens was the government trying to get people who have their own farm in their backyard. In other words, if you're growing a tomato in a pot in your backyard, they want you to register that with the government. And people are like, what's the big deal? Well, they want it registered with the government because when they do all of this, which is very soon, likely before 2030, and everything gets shut down, well, your garden, that's your personal garden, is going to become a community garden. So if you think that you are growing food on your own and you could be dependent without the government, think again. Because the government's going to say, well, you got enough food in your backyard. You're growing corn and our Monsanto dirt and our chemtrailing actually didn't even work and you were still able to grow food. Because don't forget, they're preventing people from being able to grow food because of all the chemical dusting they're doing every single day, which is done by design. Because of them blocking the sun, which is done by design. Okay? But just say hypothetically you actually have a greenhouse. You're actually able to grow something in your yard. Maybe by, whatever means you're using, you're able to prevent this from contaminating your food or affecting your food. Well, they want to make sure that you've registered that so that they can come and take it from you, right? Well, this is another way, of course, that they're going to do that by telling you that your carbon footprint when it comes to growing food at home is more and higher. And what is the term? It's a 5 times greater than food that's grown conventionally, okay? This is propaganda at its finest. And anyone that believes this type of stuff, you might as well have I've said before, you might as well have sucker tattooed on your forehead. You might as well have tattooed on your forehead, okay? Growing your own food in an allotment may not be as good for the environment as expected, a study suggests. The carbon footprint of homegrown foods is 5 times greater than produce from conventional agricultural practices, such as rural farms, data shows. Makes no sense, but of course. Data shows us this, right? Data. Did you ever meet this guy, Data? Has anyone ever met somebody who's been asked in one of these polls that they constantly tell us about? Of course not. Somebody's really asked. The polls are to manipulate you. Just like they use the word data. Well, you can't argue science, you can't argue data. Oh yeah? Who's the data from? Is it from Bill Gates directly? Is it from the World Economic Forum directly? Because there's no real data, and if you use common sense, which they don't want you to use, you would say, how in the world would somebody literally putting a seed in their backyard be more dangerous to the climate than factories with huge pipes coming out? Oh, well, of course, because it's ultimately about being able to control your food again. So the carbon footprint of homegrown foods is 5 times greater than produce from the conventional agricultural practices. A study from the University of Michigan looked at how much CO2 is produced when growing food in different types of urban farms and found that on average, a serving of food made from traditional farms creates 0.07 kilograms of CO2. I love when they do stuff like this too. Like there's like, oh, 0.07. And then people out there who are completely zombies, they think that they're smart. These are people who are like brag about their education, etc. And again, I went to school. I went through it all. And then when you realize it's all a waste of time, you need to just say, you know what? I wasted all these years of my life. This stuff, I learned nothing but lies. I was indoctrinated. But there's people, they love this type of stuff. They're like, oh, I'll argue that 0.07 kilograms of CO2. And they think that they sound smart. And you just go, where'd you hear that? And they just go, well, it's from data and studies. And then you just keep asking them. And they don't even, you heard it from propaganda. Okay? You heard it from propaganda, because that's what this is. The impact of on the environment is almost 5 times higher at 0.34 kilograms per portion for individual gardens, such as vegetable patches or allotments. The majority of the emissions do not come from the growing of the food themselves, the scientists say, but from the infrastructure needed to allow the food to be grown. Researchers grouped agriculture sites into 3 categories: individual or family gardens, including allotments, collective gardens, such as community gardens, and larger commercial-oriented urban farms. Jake Hawes, a PhD candidate at Michigan and first author of the study, said, the most significant contributor to carbon emissions on the urban agricultural sites we studied was the infrastructure used to grow the food. From raised beds to garden sheds to pathways, these constructions had a lot of carbon invested in their construction. I mean, do you know how dumb you have to be to believe this? So first of all, somebody find Jake Hawes. Get yourself a pair of handcuffs and put them on Jake Hawes, because Jake Hawes is an enemy to humanity, okay? These absolute lunatics, that's what they are. We're talking about eating, the most important thing in your life. Everybody dies without food and water, okay? Let's start there, okay? That's real science. You cannot live without food and water. If you disagree with that science, I recommend that you try it. Try to go without water for a month and food for a month, and let me know if you're still alive. The answer is going to be 100% no, because you can't even go a week probably without hydration, okay? So we all need food and water, but let's think of ways, right, to prevent people from growing their own food, right? It's not bad enough that the food's got nothing but chemicals in it at the grocery store. If you look at the labels, it's not bad enough the prices of the food and what they cost. They want to make sure you don't try to grow stuff on your own, because people are becoming so broke, they're realizing that a bunch of bananas is like $10, that they're saying, maybe I'll just start growing fruit at my house. Maybe I'll grow vegetables too, because I can't afford to live like this. Well, they want to make sure on top of that, well, you're not allowed to. Why am I allowed to grow my food? Well, it's bad for the environment. Wait, growing food in my backyard and why is that? Well, because, you know, when you raise the bed to put it in your back, that is really bad. Raised beds and garden sheds. Might as well start a nursery rhyme, right? Raised beds and garden sheds. The fastest way to take your food away, right? These are constructions that have a lot of carbon invested. So we should all just not worry about how we're going to eat or drink, because we don't have to worry about that. The government's going to handle that for us. Duh, right? We'll get a little prison food, some slop on a plate. It'll get delivered by Amazon, right? They'll drop it off at our door, right? Or Uber Eats. Hey, here's your prison food. And you go, oh, okay, am I getting protein? No, you're getting Soylent food. It's plant-based, okay? Tomorrow, you're going to get a little bit of meat, and it's going to be human. Enjoy. This goes on to say poorly managed compost and other synthetic inputs can also be important contributors, though they were not the majority of most of our sites. The study published in the journal Nature Cities recruited 73 urban agriculture sites around the world, including Europe, the US, and the UK, and conducted a comprehensive life cycle assessment on the site's infrastructure, irrigation, and supplies. Fruit was found to be 8.6 times more eco-friendly when grown conventionally compared to in a city, whereas vegetables were 5.8 times better for the environment when left to the professionals. How about you leave common sense to the professionals? I mean, this is like what we're talking about here. They give you data. Oh, it's better to grow fruit. And people hear that and they're like, yeah, data, right? It's one of those things too that they've pushed over and over in our society is data minded, data mind. You know, oh yeah, they're going to be important. Follow the statistics, because they make up the statistics and they want you to follow the statistics. Okay. How about just common sense? We need food to live. So they're finding other ways to tell you that you can't grow your own food, and nobody out there is going, oh, that's a problem. That's a problem. Oh, yeah. You ever heard of government overreach? Oh, no, that's not real. That doesn't really exist. The government's just telling you not to grow food because people will live hundreds of years from now because we all stop breathing, right? Eventually, like I've covered, they're going to tell you that the carbon that they want to stop producing is you. Remember, we're carbon-based life forms, okay? Human beings, carbon. Hello? Nobody reading between the lines. The carbon they want to limit is you. They want you restricted to movement. We just had the outbreak. They just practiced on you, telling you where you could and couldn't go, how long you could leave your house, and how close you could be to other people. Okay? You're going to be imprisoned by the carbon footprint unless we stop these lunatics. Unless people out there who think they're smart get out of their own, get away from the mirror and loving yourself and thinking you know more than everyone else and realize that the whole thing is a scam. All of it. It's all propaganda. Okay? This is the worst propaganda. This is the stupidest thing in the history of the world. And this is what the alt-right media doesn't do. Again, the alt-right media brings up the climate. They call them climate cults. And then they like to crack jokes about how much the carbon footprint is of Taylor Swift or John Kerry, instead of talking about the real bones of this, which is that you're not going to leave your home. They just did the trial run on you with the outbreak, and it's going to get worse. Okay? Masks prevent carbon emissions. Do you see where this is headed? Okay, breathing out carbon, okay? Anybody talk about basic photosynthesis and trees, et cetera, about oxygen and carbon? No, they don't want to talk about that. Why? Because it makes too much sense. They've changed the science, right? Men can have babies. Do you forget? Okay? So the alt-right doesn't cover this because they're not allowed to cover it because they're controlled. And they want to tell you that it's just some climate cult thing. And that's why the conservatives in the White House like to constantly talk about the climate issue like it's a real issue. You don't hear them bring up geoengineering ever. Does the alt-right bring up geoengineering? No. Did they bring up chemtrails? No. Did they bring up Operation Popeye? No. They want to keep you in this because ultimately there's still going to be a carbon footprint with conservatives. It's going to be for everyone. They're going to, we're going to band together and we're going to have our own, we'll figure out a way. We still have freedom. Yeah, no, you don't. This is all an illusion, folks, and they're not going to let you grow your own food. The article goes on to continue to talk about a serving of urban tomatoes makes on average 0.17 kilograms of CO2 compared to 0.27 kilograms in a conventional farm, which would use an energy-intensive greenhouse. Now, they deliberately use wording like this because the common person just thinks this is some type of science, obviously confuses them because nobody even knows what that means. But I'll analyze that paragraph and I'll summarize it for you, okay? What it means is that they don't want you to grow your own food because they want you to be dependent on them. And everything that we could possibly imagine is going to be dependent on them. And you're not going to be able to live without them. Your behavior, them. To eat and drink, them. They're going to be in charge of all of it. And we're talking about the same monsters that both political sides hate. The liberals hate conservatives hate liberals, they hate Trump, conservatives hate Biden. And it's all the same people who are doing this. And nobody's figure it out yet, okay? Control the food, control the people. Control the food, control the people. So they keep going on in the article, talking about gardeners should also try to build their own site with recycled or secondhand materials. Of course, because they build it with secondhand materials so that your food could become... I'm surprised they're not putting, hey, don't use, either promoting Monsanto dirt or just telling us that we should grow our own food in our own feces. I'm sure that'll be next because I'm sure that is good for the carbon footprint, right? That's good for the environment. Taking a dump, growing your carrots in it, right? They'll tell us that and people will be like, yeah, okay, what's the big deal? Bro, you're bro. You think everything's a conspiracy, bro? Yeah, no, it's not. It's not. This is all naturally occurring. All of a sudden, growing food is bad. Tell someone that 100 years ago, they would have probably put you in a guillotine just for bringing it up, okay? You definitely would have got slapped in the face, probably with a closed fist, right? But that's hate crime now, so you can't even say something about punching somebody in the face. Oh, my goodness, right? 1984 personified. So they want you to grow it in recycled wood. You know what I mean? You could grow your own. We're not trying to tell you what to do, but for the environment, why don't you try growing your plant instead of using dirt? Why don't you just use grass or mud? It's not growing. Well, at least you're trying and it's good for the environment. Oh, okay. It's stupidity on steroids is what we're living among. So eventually, this is going to become normalized, folks. They're going to tell you that you can't grow your own food. And then to make people not suspicious as to why you can't grow your own food, they're going to convince all the zombies out there that it's bad for the environment. So they'll say, you don't need to grow it. We'll grow it in a laboratory where it's apparently safe, where we'll make up, the government will give us fake stats about how it's not bad for the environment inside of the laboratory, which has pipes and smoke coming out. That's good smoke versus bad smoke. Other than the smoke that's getting blown up your rear end by these people, it's all one and the same, right? As long as they tell us that the data is good, then it's good. If they tell us it's bad, it's bad. And that's all it takes to convince the sheeple in the year 2024. So good luck. Good luck in the future, ladies and gentlemen, trying to grow your own food. We all know the struggle with it anyway, with everything they've been trying to do with the dirt. We all know about the forced Monsanto. We know about what they've been doing to fertilizer. We know what they've been doing from the sky to poison crops. We know what they're doing with the sun. But guess what? Nobody else seems to know. And certainly your politicians are not going to bring that up. And neither is your alt-right media. Unbelievable, folks. Unbelievable that an article like this even exists. But there'll be people out there who say, interesting, yeah. Oh, the least you could do is change your soil, right? Next it'll be that your soil's bad, use your feces. Then it'll be your feces is bad. Why don't you just take your seeds and throw them in water and watch a tree grow? Huh? Yeah, it'll make sense to these people because they still think men can have babies, and we're having arguments about that. So there you go. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. Thanks to Sean again for sharing this over on the website. God bless all of you as always and your families.